what's going on in the world today, we see that there's a very big divide in the world. It's what Chazal say, that we know there's Shiva Mumais, there's 70 nations, but 70 nations are really 35 and 35. And 35 of them are controlled by what's called Edom, the Western world, what many consider America. And 35 are controlled by Yishmael, the Arab Muslim world. And this is our tradition, that the two main Ummah Ha'olam are Esav and Yishmael, Edom and Yishmael. And what we want to try to understand and decipher, and maybe get some clarity, is who will be standing last. In this great war that we see today, that maybe 10 years ago we didn't see, but this is now as clear as day, that world history is coming down to the two powers, the Western world against Yishmael. Maybe Yishmael's power was much less 10 years ago, but certainly today, the Western world is so occupied with trying to identify what Yishmael is. Where are they? Who are they? What country are they in? Are they Iran? Are they the Muslim Brotherhood? Are they ISIS? Are they Boko Haram? Are they all the other names, all the other groups? Who are they? But bottom line, they're all Yishmael. And the question is, who stands last in that great war, which is also called Mechemes Gog uMagog? Who stands last? So, we're all familiar that there are four main empires in world history. What are they? You have Bavel, Babylon, Paras Umadai, Persia, Yavan, Greece, and Edom, Rome. Question is, what about Yishmael? Why is Yishmael not on that list? Is Yishmael on that list? Ibn Ezra says no, and it's not one of the four Ummahs. It's part of Yavan. But the consensus of almost all the Rishonim is that Malchus number 4 is Malchus Edom. So what about Yishmael? Why is Yishmael not on the list? So we have over here something that I want to bring to your attention. And it's a Medrash Shachar Tov. And it's also a Rashi at the end of the 5th parak of Zechariah. And when Rashi quotes over the Medrash, he has one nuance of difference that makes all the difference in the world. There's a pasuk in Tehillim. Parak Vav of Tehillim begins the following: Lam natseach b'neginois al hashminis mizmar leDavid. B'neginois, with an instrument, al hashminis, on the 8, the number 8. By the way, this pasuk comes from a parak that we say every single day, twice a day. Tachnon. The parak of Tachnon. Hashem al b'yavcha sechicheni is introduced with this pasuk, Lam natseach b'neginos al hashminas. Says the Medrash Shachar Tov, look at number 13. That even though we have a tradition, there are only 4 Malchios, it's 4 that are 8. What are they? Number 8 is Edom. Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar saw in the vision a monster with a head of gold, that's 1. With a chest and arms, that's 2. With a stomach and 2 thighs, that's another 2. Legs, another 2. Feet, another 2. You ready for the 8 Malchios? Number 1, Bavel, Kazdim. We always know Bavel, but Bavel has a counterpart, the Chaldeans. Number 2, Madai. Madai and Paras, Persia, Media. That's 3 and 4. Yavan. Yavan goes along with Maikdan. And finally, Yishmael and Edom. That even though we know there's something called Edom, but Edom has a counterpart. And that's Yishmael. If you look in Rashi and Zechariah, and by the way, the Medrash says very clearly that Klal Yisrael says to Ribbon Shalom, we praise you when you gather us out of the 8 exiles. And says the Medrash, what is number 8? The Medrash starts off, Edom hi hashminis. Number 8 is Edom. The final one is Edom. So the Medrash seems to be saying, if you want to know who's going to win the war between America against Iran, against the Yishmael, says the Medrash Shachar Tov, Western world, Edom. Edom is number 8. However, Rashi changes it. If you look in Rashi at the end of the 5th parak of Zechariah, Rashi says the 4 Malchios are 8. What are they? Bavel, Kazdim, Madai, Paras, Antiochus, Maikdan, Edom, Yishmael, Rashi says. Now it's not absolutely clear from Rashi that he dafka means to say Yishmael is after Edom, but maybe. Reb Chaim Kanievsky thinks Rashi means to say that Yishmael is after Edom. By the way, the Arizal tells us also that when they saw the vision of the monster, the head was gold, that means the first galus was Bavel. The arms, the bottom of the feet, the 2 feet are Edom and Yishmael. That right now we are undergoing two simultaneous galusim, Edom and Yishmael. By the way, this week's Parsha, what's this week's Parsha? Yaakov Pekudei, and what else? Parsha's Para. Says a Medrash, the Para Aduma represents the 4 Malchios. The Para is Mitzrayim. Red, that's Bavel. Tamima, Madai. The Medians are not that bad. They serve Avodah Zarah. It only comes from their bad tradition. They're like Tamima. Ein Boimum, Yavan. Yavan is not so bad either. Shimon HaTzadik, when he came before Alexander the Great, Alexander bowed down to him. The Medrash continues. Asher loy Allah aleha oil, Edom. The Edom, Esav, America, they're so rotten. They never accept the yoke of heaven. So what's God going to do to Edom? Says the Medrash. V'nasatem oisa el Elazar hakayin. You know what Elazar stands for? Says the Medrash. Kael, God, Ezer. God is going to have to help us. And you know what God's going to do to Edom? V'hoitzi oisa el michutz lamachana. He's going to have to remove him from this world. You know what else he's going to have to do? V'shachad oisa lefanav. He's going to have to shecht him. And at the end of days, God is going to slaughter Edom. Like the pasuk says, Zevach Gadol, V'tavach Gadol b'eretz Edom, Zevach l'Hashem b'batzra. So if you want to know which Ummah is going to stand at the end of days in this great war between Edom and Yishmael, the Medrash Shocher Tov seems to say Edom stands last. The Yalkut Shimoni seems to say Edom stands last. Rashi seems to say Yishmael stands last. So let's get this a little bit better. The Gemara says in Masechta Avodah Zarah and Daf Beis Amud Aleph that at the end of days, the Baruch Shalom is going to take the Sefer Torah and put it in his chest, hold on to it. He's going to lift it up and say, anyone who was involved in this, come get your reward. So all the nations are going to come clamoring. Oh, we were involved. Everything we did was to help Jews. We made roads, we made stores, we made bridges. Everything so Jews could learn Torah. Says the Gemara, you know who enters first? Rome. And Rome says to God, you know what we did for the Jews? We made Main Street, we made marketplaces, we made bathhouses, we minted coins. Everything we did is so Jews should learn Torah. Why do we have Main Street? It's easier to get to the Shiur tonight. Why do we have Parsons Boulevard? To get here. Why do we have everything? All the stores are just so you could learn tonight. So God says to the Romans, you fools, that's not what your motivation was. That's not what you were thinking. Rabbi Glatstein says to the Romans, you made stores to put prostitutes. You made bathhouses to delight in. Get out of here, I'm not giving you any reward. You ever open up a Gemara? So Hashem kicks them out. Says the Gemara, after Rome comes the Persians. And the Persian says, God, you know what we did for the Jewish people? We built cities, we built bridges, we waged war. All that the Jews should be able to learn Torah. And Hashem says, that's not why you did it. Get lost, you ever learn Torah? And Hashem doesn't reward them. And then all the other nations come before Hashem, and Hashem tells them to get lost. And the Gemara asks, once the Persians saw that the Romans weren't getting anywhere, why did the Persians come? And the Gemara says, well, the Persians said to themselves, the Romans destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, that's why they're not getting any reward. But we didn't destroy the Beis HaMikdash, so we'll give it a chance. Says the Gemara, why of all the Ummahs, the only nations the Gemara mentions explicitly are Rome and Persia. Why only them? All the other ones are just included in one big hodgepodge. Why are the only nations mentioned Rome and Persia? Says the Gemara, they're the most chashuv of all the nations. Says the Gemara, they're the most chashuv. Why? What makes them so chashuv? In fact, the Gemara says, the Gemara mocks the Romans. The Gemara mocks the Persians. Says the Gemara, what makes them the most chashuv is that these are the only two nations that will exist until Mashiach comes. Rome and Persia. Now Rome, you could say, is the Western world. But Persia will last until Mashiach comes? Persian Empire fell 2,000 years ago. What does it mean Persia will last until Mashiach comes? There's no Persia. Persia today are not even descendants of the ancient Persians. So what does it mean Persia will last until Mashiach comes? And we know that that's not true. We know that the two nations that will last till Mashiach comes is Rome and Yishmael, not Persia. So we have to know the Maral. Very important Maral. We've spoken this out in the past. The Maral could be found in the Sefer Ner Mitzvah, and it's number 19. And the Maral wants to know why in the four Malchios you have Bavel, Babylon, you have Persia, you have Greece, and you have Rome. What happened to Yishmael? Says the Maral, two answers. Answer number one, what's a Malchus? What's a kingdom? A kingdom is somebody who usurps the glory, majesty, and power of the Jewish people. Klal Yisrael had Malchus. Which Melech? Malchus Beis David. When Babylon came into Eretz Yisrael, and they exiled Asher haglaha mirushalayim, emagoyla asher haglasaim. Yechanya, Melech Yehuda. Yechanya was the last king of Yehuda. Asher hagla Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel. Babylon came and took the glory of the Jewish people for themselves. And they gave their glory after Babylon was complete. They passed it on to the Persians. And when Persia was over, they passed it on to the Greeks. And when Greece was finished, they passed it on to Rome. But says the Maral, Yishmael does not take the Malchus of Klal Yisrael. They don't take the greatness of Klal Yisrael. They don't take the grandeur of Klal Yisrael. They have their own independent source of power. You know what their source of power is? The prayer of Abraham Avinu. Abraham davened, Lu Yishmael Yichya Lefanecha, which, by the way, the Megal HaMukos says, we know there's 35 and 35 Umais. And Yishmael leads 35, altogether 36. Lu Yishmael, the 36 nations, under the guise of Yishmael. Lu Yishmael. So they don't take Malchus of Klal Yisrael. They take their own Malchus. They have their own independent source of power. And therefore they don't make it to the list. So when the committee takes a vote, who makes it to the list of the Hall of Fame of Malchios, Yishmael is disqualified. Because the definition of a Malchus is someone who usurps the power of Klal Yisrael. That's why we find that Rome and Klal Yisrael, there's a relationship. When we're up, they're down. When they're up, we're down. Because it's one power, it's one kayach. Either we have it or they have it. But we don't find this relationship between us and Yishmael. We could both be on top, we could both be on the bottom. There's no relationship. Therefore, Yishmael is not on the list. But then comes the Maral, and Maral is Megala to us a tremendous secret. Says Maral, that's one answer, but that's not the definitive answer. You know why Yishmael is not a Malchus? They are a Malchus. Which Malchus are they? They're Paras, Persia. Persians and Yishmael, it's one Malchus. But the Persian Empire fell. Says the Maral, it's not a matter of ethnicity. It's not a matter of culture, it's a matter of action. Each one of the Malchios, they act differently. The way the ancient Persians act is violent. The way Yishmael acts is violent. They may not be related, they may not be the same people or culture. But whenever you see in Shas Persia, think Yishmael. Yishmael and Persians are one and the same. Paras and Yishmael are the same Malchus. That's the Chiddush of the Maral. And that's how the Maral concludes. That even though today, the people in Persia and Yishmael have nothing to do with each other, the Persian Empire is still strong. Where are they? They're in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan. They're all considered Paras. They're all considered Persians. So that means now we understand. When the Gemara says, at the end of days, two nations are going to come and claim reward for the Torah, it's Rome and Persia, which means Esav and Yishmael. So now I want to tell you a very frightening Gemara. So who's going to win? Now, especially look around today, you don't even have to go to the Yishmaelim. You look at Iran itself. Now Iran itself is also completely Yishmaelim today. And this is all part of Malchus Paras. And we want to know, who's going to be the last man standing? Esav or Yishmael? By the way, my message to both of them is we wish both of them tremendous hatzlacha. They should wipe each other out. No, none of them should be standing. Both sides should mamish be matzliach as much as possible. But the question is, who stands last? So far we saw. The Medrash Shachar Tov says Edom. Rashi says Yishmael. You should know it's a machlokes Tanoim. Machlokes Tanoim? Yeah, it's a machlokes Tanoim. The Gemara in Yuma brings down Daf Yudam and Aleph, number 18, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Asida roimi shetipo biyad paras. Rome will fall to Persia. In other words, America falls to Yishmael. Like the pasuk says, listen to my counsel, Hashem says, my counsel that I take against, that I devised against Edom, and my thoughts that I have against the descendants of Taman. Taman was the grandson of Esav. They will be carted off by the youngest of the sheep. And we know in the Chumash, by the way, Persia in Chumash is called Tiras, and Tiras was the youngest son of Yefes. And what the Navi is saying is that Edom, at the end of days, will be carted off by Persia. In other words, Persia, Yishmael will completely destroy the Western world. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So then, according to him, we're not in the right country right now. The Gemara brings the opinion of Rabbi Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai. Also, Rome will fall to Persia, which means Edom will fall to Yishmael. Why? You ready for this one? This one you could think about for the next 20 years. Ready for this Kal V'chomer? Who built the first Beis HaMikdash? Klal Yisrael. The first Beis HaMikdash, which was built by Jews and destroyed by Babylonians. The Persians were so strong, they defeated the Babylonians. So the second Beis HaMikdash, which was built by the Persians and destroyed by the Romans, certainly the Persians will destroy the Romans. Huh? You ready for this? If a Beis HaMikdash, which Jews could build, and Babylonians could destroy, Persians are so strong, they could even defeat those who destroyed a Beis HaMikdash built by Jews, says the Gemara, then the second Beis HaMikdash, which was even built by Persians, certainly the Persians will defeat the Romans who destroyed it. And the Gemara feels this is an irrefutable argument, a logic. What the logic is exactly, I can tell you, you could think about this Kal V'chomer for the next 20 years. Hopefully Mashiach will come before. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, that last man standing is Yishmael. Comes along Rav. Rav says, no way. Rav says, Persia falls to Rome. Yishmael falls to America. How do I know? But how could that be, the Gemara asks? But the Persians built the Beis HaMikdash. The Romans destroyed it. Says the Gemara, even though it doesn't make sense, that's our tradition, that at the end of days, Rome will defeat Persia, and America will rule the world for 9 months. Who's the last man standing? The answer is we don't really know. It's Machlokes Rashi and the Medrash Shechertev. Rashi says Yishmael, Medrash Shechertev says Edom. And it's not just that, it's Machlokes between Tanoim. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai says, Persia is the last man standing. Yishmael is the last man standing. Rav says no. Rav is Tanahu Poleg. Rav says no. Rome. So I was wondering, thinking about the Chad Gadya, we need a psak over here. Who's the last man standing? Comes Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and says Reb Chaim, the secret of world history is found in Chad Gadya. Because what we need to discover now is, who's the kid, and who's the cat, and who's the dog, and who's the stick, and who's the fire, and who is the bull, and who's the shoichet, and who's the malach hamavas. But Reb Chaim Kanievsky says brilliantly, we know who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, and we know who the kid is. We're the kid. Klal Yisrael throughout Tanakh is compared to Tzayin, Va'atein Tzayin, Tzayin Marisi. Haman told Achashverosh, those Jews on Sukkot, they dance like a bunch of goats. Klal Yisrael is compared to a Sep Pezura Yisrael. And in between the goat and God, how many characters are there? Lam Natseach ala Shminis. There are 8 characters. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who do you think the 8 characters are? The 8 Malchios. And what we want to know is who's the Shoichet and who's the Malach HaMavas. One thing I guarantee you, if those 2 jobs were available, Esav and Yishmael would qualify, both would qualify for both jobs very well. They both would get the job as Shoichet, they both would get the job as Malach HaMavas. But the question is, who's who? So you say, well, it will be Machlokes, Rashi against the Shechatayv, Rebbe against Rav. Comes Reb Chaim Kanievsky, wrote a sefer, Kaima Dekra. Now, if you want to know a little bit about Reb Chaim Kanievsky, I'll tell you one story. Chaim Kanievsky was once discussing, he was writing a sefer on the intricate laws of chagavim, grasshoppers, about whether they're kosher, they're not kosher. And he was discussing a certain rare type of grasshopper, which was Einoi Benimtza, which cannot be found. And he had some difficulty explaining one detail, whereupon that particular grasshopper flew into his room, flew onto his hand, and he was able to show the people that halacha, and then the grasshopper left. So we're talking about somebody who he knows what's going on in the world. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky in the Sefer Time of the Krah. He quotes Rashi, he quotes the Medrash Shechertov, that there are 8 Malchios, Bavel, Chaldeans, Madai, Paras, Yavan, Moikdan, Yishmael, and Edom. And Rashi says Edom and Yishmael. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Nebuchadnezzar was Babylon. He was the king of Babylon. But his wife was Chaldean, where his own son, Evel Merodach, was not Babylonian. He was also Chaldean. And Nebuchadnezzar did not like his son, because after all, the Babylonian Empire would end with him. So what did he do with his son? He put him in jail. A lot of people do that today. They think they're putting their kid in a playpen. It's the same thing. And he put his kid in jail, and he didn't let him out, ever. When Nebuchadnezzar died, they let Evil Merodach out of jail. And he became the first king of Hasdiim. And his son was Belshazzar. So number one, we have Nebuchadnezzar. You know who Nebuchadnezzar is? He is a cat. Why is he a cat? We'll see why. And then after him we have the Kasdiim, Evil Merodach, and Belshazzar. And after Belshazzar we have Paras Umadai. Now Chazal tell us that Paras Umadai made a deal. The Gemara says in Megillah that first the Medians said, we'll be king, and then you, Paras, you'll be king. But as soon as Paras took the kingdom from Madai, they never gave it back. You know, it's like anything in life. Once you taste power, people can't relinquish it. It's like someone says, I'll be the president of the show for a year. He means 100 years. No power is ever relinquished. And then, so we have Paras Umadai. Then we have Alexander the Great, Alexander Mokhtan. And after Alexander the Great, his empire was divided by his 4 generals into Yavan. And who came after Yavan? Edom! And say Chazal, Yishmael already conquered Yerushalayim from Rome in the times of the Goinim, and Yishmael will carry the day until Mashiach comes. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, now we understand the secret of Chad Gadya. Who's the goat? We're the goat. We're the sheep. Sep Hizura Yisrael. And who's our father? Who's the Abba? Avinu Shabashamayim. The Gemara says, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. The Torah tells us. God's our father. And He bought us with 2 zuz. 2 luchos habras. And first comes the cat. The Navi Yeshaya says, you know what Nebuchadnezzar is? The Navi Yeshaya says about him. Ve'ana iyim ba'armen oisav, says the Targum. Nebuchadnezzar is like a cat. And he's taken over by Belshazzar. Belshazzar is like a dog. He's like a dog. Because Chazal say in Rosh Hashanah, he took out the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash, and he fed his dogs with the Beis HaMikdash. So he's the dog. And then after Belshazzar comes Paras Umadai. First comes, Madai is a stick. Because Daryavesh and Koresh beat open the brains of Belshazzar with a stick. By the way, you know what the stick was? The menorah. They took the flowers of the menorah, the golden flowers, and they beat his brains, Chazal say, like a stick. And then comes Achashverosh. Achashverosh is like a fire. Why is he like a fire? His anger burnt in him. And the Medrash says that Hashem turned to the angel appointed over anger. And he said, stoke the coals of his anger. Throw some sulfur in. So Achashverosh is like a big fire. And who took over Persia? The Macedonians, Mokhtan, who were very involved in arayos. The Gemara in Talmud says on Daf Lamed Beis, they sprinkled themselves arayos like water. And then comes the ox. Who's the ox? Greece. Like we say Chanukah time. What gezerah did they put on us? They made us write Kisu lachem al keren hashar ein lachem chelek v'lekei Yisrael. So they're like the ox. Rabbi Sai. And who's the shoichet? Rome is the shoichet. Edom is the shoichet. Like the Gemara says in Psachim, the Romans are shoichtim. They shecht tzadikim like agolim. And who's the Malach HaMaves? Who's the last man standing? Yishmael is the Malach HaMaves. Why is he the Malach HaMaves? Because it says about Yishmael, V'hu yeh pereh Adam. Says Chazal in Bereshis Rabbah. All other nations, they spoil money. Yishmael, just follow the news for 1 minute. They're not interested in money. They're interested in murder. They have 10-year-old kids committing murder. They plunder not money, they plunder souls. They're the Malach HaMaves. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Yishmael will be the last man standing until the Rebbeinu Shalom destroys them and brings Mashiach. By the way, the Baal HaTurim agrees with Reb Chaim Kanievsky. If you look at the end of Parshas Vayera, it says about Yishmael, Al Pnei Kol Echav Nafal, and the beginning of Chayei Sarah is Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak, says the Baal HaTurim, only when Yishmael falls will Mashiach ben David come. What does Yitzchak have to do with Yishmael? And then remember, we just had a Shiur. Yitzchak is the Gilgal of who? Eliyahu Navi. That's the connection, possibly. By the way, Reb Chaim Kanievsky is not the only one who reads world history into Chad Gadya. The Nesivos, the Haggadah Maaseh Hashem, they all agree Yishmael will defeat Edom. And we all feel very comfortable here in the Western world. Yeah, you know, America will protect us, and America will conquer Yishmael, and then Mashiach will come. Not according to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Maybe according to Medrash Sheicher Tov, Edom will be the last man standing. And maybe according to the opinion of Rav, but that ain't the opinion of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. So, if you want to make yourself feel better, how are you going to read the Chad Gadya according to those who say Edom will be the last man standing? So I have a different shot in the Chad Gadya. Maybe Yishmael is the Shoichet, but everybody knows there was somebody in this generation who was known as the Malach HaMaves, someone who my grandfather saw. Dr. Mengele was the angel of death, the Malach HaMaves. That's what he was known as. Maybe he's the Malach HaMaves. But whatever it is, we wish both sides tremendous hatzlacha in their avodah of wiping out the other party. But I want to point out one last thing. That if you take this opinion, that Yishmael will be the last man standing, it is somewhat ironic that the Haggadah begins with Karpas. And what is Karpas? We know Karpas, the definitive explanation of Karpas from Rabbeinu Manoach al Rambam, that Pas comes from Ksainas Pasim, Tzaddik. And the Ben Ish Chai says, Kar is Mecher, the sale of Yosef. So if I were to ask you, the Golus will end with Yishmael, and all the Golusim, whether it's Golus Edom, Yavan, Paras, Bavel, Mitzrayim, who put us in Golus? It was also Yishmael. Who was Yosef sold to? Archas Yishmaelim. Remember we said many times that the Marshal writes in a Tshuva, Marshal writes in Siman Peiches, that when you take the Afikomen, you should sling it over your shoulders. And quoting the Gemara in Pesachim, the Gemara in Pesachim says that they used to take the Karban Pesach and sling it over their shoulders. Amar Rav Elish, how do you sling it over your shoulders? Tayos. You remember the joke? Not Fios, Tayos. Rashi says, what's Tayos? Rashi says, like Yishmaelim. And the question is, what in the world is Rav Elish saying? That you should carry the Karban Pesach like Yishmaelim? The last thing we want to do the night of the Seder is do anything like Yishmaelim. And yet there's an inyan to carry the Afikomen over your shoulder like Yishmaelim. It says Rav Shlomo Kluger, it's very important. The night of the Seder we remember our freedom. We remember bondage. But why don't we do anything to remember how we got down to Mitzrayim in the first place? We do. We take the Afikomen and we sling it over our shoulders like a bunch of Yishmaelim, and we recall that the same hilarious that we have to deal with today, they're the same guys who got us into this mess in the first place. The same Archas Yishmaelim who sold Yosef Hatzadik. And it's interesting, the way the story begins is also the way the story ends. Zohar HaKadosh says, Ein lecha galus kasha liYisrael k'may galus Yishmael. There is no worse galus like galus Yishmael. When I was a kid, I never would have even dreamt of the fact, Golus Yishmael, what's Golus Yishmael? Well, whoever thought about Yishmaelim? And now we see how this is becoming a reality in the world. And not only is it a reality, there are opinions that this will be the last Golus. Pirkei Rebbe Lezer says, why was his name called Yishmael? He's called Yishmael because Rebbeinu Shalom is going to listen to the tefillos of Klal Yisrael, the Achras Hayamim, when we call out and we cry out, from Golus Yishmael. Yishmael, God will listen to our tefillah when we cry out in the Golus Yishmael. So we're mispalel that whatever they are, whether they're the Shoichet or whether they're the Malach HaMaves, we're mispalel that very soon V'yasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'shachat l'Malach HaMaves V'vias Gael Tzedek Meher V'yameinu Amen.